SCORE Northeast Wisconsin and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biz Talk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences. From starting to sustaining growth, learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you miss anything, you can catch the Biz Talk podcast at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biz Talk on WHBY.
Good morning and welcome to Biz Talk with SCORE. I hope you're enjoying your Saturday and our April weather in February. Really looking forward to another show with you. And this week, I'm the host, Terry Pinch, and joining me as co-host is John Drengler. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, Terry, good morning. How you doing?
Excellent. And you?
I am, and I've got a fun fact for you this morning. Do you know what February is?
The second month of the year.
Oh, that's correct. But it's also National Human Relations Month. It's the part of human resources in a company that goes beyond just the regular administrative tasks of managing payroll and benefits. It's all about HR management and how it's integral in helping develop trust and employee development and diversity in companies. So with that as a background, this morning's guest can really talk about the full scope of human resource management. We have with us today Rebecca Stanonik, and she is the HR director for one of the larger hygiene and tissue products manufacturers in the area, Essity. Rebecca, welcome to Biz Talk.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good morning to you.
Good to have you here. Why don't we start today? Tell us a little bit about your role and about what Essity does and maybe a little background about your career in HR.
Sure, happy to. As you said, I work for a company called Essity. Hopefully by now, the Fox Valley is very well known employer in the Fox Valley, but if not, it was formerly known as SCA. And for those real long time listeners, we can go all the way back to Wisconsin Tissue as well. So we are a predominant long-term employer here in the Fox Valley. I work out of the office side of our company. And I say that is because we have a large manufacturing and converting presence here. You can see part of it right off of Highway 41, but I work out of the office building over by the airport off of CB. And from an Essity perspective, we're a global company headquartered out of Sweden, but for North America, for the United States and Canada, our headquarters is out of Philadelphia. The role that I happen to have is a business unit role, which means I help support our business unit called Professional Hygiene. In layman's terms, they are the ones who are away from your home, your restrooms, maybe your mechanic shop that would have some hand wiping, towels, toilet paper, soap dispensers, etc. That's where you can see it. The product name that could be identified when you're sitting in one of those restrooms would be Torque. So we have a lot of different business units, a lot of different product lines, but the one that I help support is Professional Hygiene. This is my 15th year working at Essity. My career is almost doubled that, but not all at Essity. I've also worked in public accounting for a long stint. A lot of differences and also similarities from these two industries. But always in the human resources area and just have changed different disciplines along the way. So that's a little bit high level about who Essity is and a little bit about me.
So the scope of your work in HR, starting back with the accounting firm, was that more local in scope and the employees that you help service versus what is the scope geographically now for Essity and what you do?
Yes. So for the majority of my career, it has been more local focused, or at least in the state of Wisconsin. The public accounting firm I worked at is no longer there. They used to be Schenck, but Schenck was bought out by CLA. They were a Wisconsin-based company back then, and I helped various locations from Milwaukee, Oshkosh, Fond du Lac, and Appleton. I loved that corridor on 41. And yes, that's when the whole corridor was being constructed or redone. Everyone I got to drive through. It was wonderful. And now at Essity, so again, being here for 15 years, my scope started out just locally here at a building we call the SEC. It's called the Service Excellence Center. So I was the on-site HR manager there, helping a lot with the individuals, the departments that were located there. Over the years, it expanded to different departments that were more generally based in different areas. The sales department, so anywhere in the United States, and then even into North America, where some of our Canadians might be working as well. To most recently, when we talk about a business unit, that can be anywhere where that business unit is housed. So geographically, I do span into Europe. Latin America kind of had its own development or own representation, so I don't have as much experience with LATAM, and we don't do as much with Austria, or Australasia is what we called it, but more from a Europe perspective.
So one of the things when you're dealing on a global level like this in things of HR, and as we mentioned before, it's more about just managing the administrative side of HR. It's the key word that comes up is culture of the company, et cetera. HR gets exposed to all that in different countries, different ways employees interact, et cetera. How have you found that part of your position as you've grown in terms of your responsibilities at Essity?
I think that collaboration is the key, and that you can't be one person that knows it all. Every country has its own nuances. You have to rely on those local partnerships that you make. So I try to make a lot of friends, meet a lot of people, and utilize that networking, and to know that everybody does have differences. And you can't categorize, oh, all of Europe does it this way. No, France is much different than Sweden, which is much different than Denmark. So each country has its differences. I like to equate it even when we look at the United States. Within the United States, yes, we're one country, but the laws in Wisconsin are different than the laws in California, for example. So each one of our states is equal to sometimes those countries as well. Now in the United States, I have more of that thought and understanding of how the U.S. works, where in Europe, I didn't at the time. So I take the time to, like I said, network with local colleagues that support those countries, get to have understandings of them. And just when I am working with those directors or those businesses, or I'm sorry, not the businesses, but the departments, to not answer, to be smart enough to know, let's double check with country management on that and figure out where we need to go from there, and not give an absolute answer. But I do think, John, when you even said administrative, that was key. HR usually, and even to this day, I have a lot of people that tell me, oh, HR, so you hire and fire? Like that's all they see HR as, whether it's administrative tasks, like you said, payroll or different things, but it is so much more than that. And hiring and firing are the least of the things that I have to do. Yes, as a department, that still is something that has to be done, but that is not where human resources bring their value.
Sure. And Rebecca, just full disclosure, Rebecca and I worked together at Essity for quite a few years. And one of the things that I found as a manager of a business unit is the partnership as a stakeholder to HR. It wasn't just a function that was like a staff function to do tasks, that there was just a lot of good, you use the word collaborating, but it's also coaching, et cetera, because one of the things that's key, and we get this with even small businesses, is hiring is not the quantity of people, it's the quality of people and the fit to the business. And I would think you still spend quite a bit of time coaching and collaborating with hiring managers themselves, so they're going about it in a good, productive way.
Absolutely. And it's not just when you have the need, you should always be thinking about that. So hopefully it turns into retention, so you don't have the need, but it's something that has to be in the back of your head all the time. What am I doing to build that culture, so that when I do have to come into a hiring situation, I can be open and honest about what it is to work for me. My business might be small or large, but really what's that culture that I've already developed? Because that's really what people want to hear more about. And they get drawn into a culture. We have heard it often. If I leave a company or go to a company, it's because of a manager. I might leave because I didn't like my manager. I might have enjoyed the skills that I did or the exposures that I've had, but I might leave for a manager. Same thing now. I think I hear a lot more is about the company culture.
And Rebecca, as you look at that company culture, you've had experience both in local Wisconsin firms as well as a multinational like Essity. How does that culture work globally versus locally? How do you ensure there's a culture across the organization in a large company like Essity?
I think that, at least from my experience, whether it's been a global and or just multi-site location, even if they were all in the United States, different locations, I think from a structural perspective, it starts at the top. You need to embody some of the, I don't want to even just say basics, but the basics. What are your core values? What are maybe your beliefs and behaviors? You have to set the overarching umbrella of what that is, with allowing each one of your locations or countries to have a little bit of their own nuances, their own special. Like, for example, what makes Appleton, Wisconsin special versus if you were located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or in Philadelphia? Our location in Appleton isn't going to be the same as Milwaukee. Milwaukee's not the same as Philly. So, but we all maybe belong to one company. So what helps us, it's really looking at, okay, we're going to establish that. We're going to make sure our leaders establish the right foundation. But then if, for example, if doing a potluck in Appleton is something people really like, but in Milwaukee they wouldn't, that's okay. So then it doesn't have to be one size fits all. Let's all make sure we're a fruit. We just don't all have to be the same fruit.
Let's talk a little bit about that whole area of hiring and how that fits into the company as well, because that's something from my career, and I expect John too, was one of the things that was the hardest to get right over time, is how do you help managers learn how to hire the right people?
It is definitely a skill set. It is something I have seen sometimes the most intelligent, the best business-minded individuals fail at doing. So not everybody is cut out into being able to hire individuals. And I think it's definitely a mindset, but you have to go in with less of a mindset. You have to make sure that you check any of your biases that you might have at the door. The biases of, is somebody like me? Who was in the position before it? So more recency biases. Maybe it's a cultural background, whatever it might be. You have to go in and saying, I am looking at, and you have to be fully understood of what are the positions, what's the responsibilities, what is it that I need. So preparing what that job description would be and sticking to it. Also having the preparation of looking at your team overall. Do I have a gap in a skill set? Maybe I don't have somebody that brings the analysis that I need, the analytical skill set, but I have somebody who is really good at details and planning and so forth, but I might need this. So what is it that you need? What are all those skill sets? So I think really being prepared, holding those conversations, hopefully with your HR business partner ahead of time, getting that understanding. So then you can go into it saying the structure's set. Now I need to find the right person. But it's also not, it's asking the questions that you need to ask. A lot of times we do trust our gut a lot of times, but I still think you can lead with the right type of questions. You want to have open-ended questions. You don't want to ask yes or no questions because then you don't get to learn a lot about the person. You also want to get right to the point and ask a specific question and then leave it sit there, let the person think about it. A lot of times I will be with interviewers and they will ask leading questions. So if I ask a leading question, I'm basically saying, well, in our organization, we really look for people that can bring a diverse background and do this and that. So how do you feel about that? Well, you basically just said what you wanted me to say, so I'm going to say that, versus asking me more of an open-ended question is, what's your philosophy of having a dynamic workforce? What does that mean to you? Something like that. So it's creating the right questions. And in order to do that, you have to prepare.
Okay. With that, we're going to take our first break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBI, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back. We're glad you joined us this morning for Biz Talk with SCORE. Our guest today is Rebecca Stanonik, HR Director at Essity. Before continuing our conversation with Rebecca, to tell you a little bit about SCORE in Northeast Wisconsin. It serves a 29-county area covering Northeast and North Central Wisconsin. We have over 30 volunteers, each an expert in their field, offering entrepreneurs with no cost and confidential mentoring. These areas of expertise include IT, business planning, social media, marketing, cash flow, retail best practices, and many, many other areas, including HR. In order to register for a no-cost confidential mentoring session or to learn more about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. There you can learn more about how the SCORE chapter can assist you with starting up or growing your business. And all you have to do is complete a simple online application, and we'll set up a mentoring session for you. Simply complete that form, submit it to SCORE, and you'll hear within a couple days from one of our mentors to set up that first meeting. Remember, this is no cost, and it offers experts in many fields who can give you assistance that meet your specific business needs. And also to support small business, Northeast Wisconsin SCORE chapter is also looking for new mentors and subject matter experts. If you have expertise that you'd like to share with others, we'd love to talk to you. We welcome volunteers with experience in all aspects of business, and really small business owners need your help, and will appreciate the experience and difference that you can make to their success. Again, go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, click on the volunteer button, and just fill out a short application, and we'll get back to you to explain more. And finally, this reminder about the Biz Talk with SCORE podcast. It brings the same real-world information like you're hearing this morning, with insights from experienced entrepreneurs and business leaders, just like you're hearing this morning again on Biz Talk with SCORE and WHBY. The podcast is available when you are, and at most podcatchers and podcast apps, you'll find it available. Again, thanks for joining us this morning on Biz Talk. And now back to our discussion with Rebecca Stanonik. Rebecca, the last part of our discussion, you were talking with Terry about hiring practices and what are good management practices to ensure that you get the right employee fit in an organization. Once you have that person, then you want to keep them and obviously give them an opportunity to grow and develop in a company. So that leads to questions like training and development practices. Could you share a little bit about what you see working together with hiring managers and the employees themselves? What's key to that development, that ongoing development?
It's a great question, and it's something that I think there's a lot of different approaches that can be taken, but I find the most success in transparency. And what I mean by that is I think we need to ask our employees, and our employees have to be transparent about what they know and they don't know. Oftentimes, once I'm hired in a position, or I see once somebody's hired in the position, they now know everything. They have sold us in the interview process that they're an Excel wizard. They've rated themselves on a scale of 1 to 5, a 4.5. But now they've come into our world. We would rate them maybe a 2, a 2.5. They really don't understand Excel or now Power BI to the extent that they led us to believe. Or maybe they really did believe it, but at that company they were at prior to, they didn't use it as extensively as they will in this position. So I think that training needs to be had where you can apply it to what your job is and also the skill level. So a lot of times when we're doing trainings, I think taking a self-assessment and then the manager giving an assessment to say, yes, I agree. I agree with your self-assessment on how you I'm going to stay with technology. With Excel, I would agree with you. Or no, I think you need to get a little bit more. Let's sign up for this advance. But when I stick with the example of Excel, what I also see is a general Excel class might not be as beneficial for somebody as knowing and understanding how that company uses Excel. So maybe you have to take one of your wizards with Excel internally, work with one of your company trainers, and together you can establish a Excel training class that's going to be more meaningful and beneficial, because now a word that I use is called, it's essitized. So now it makes sense to that company. But I think not only are you going to do by asking, I think it's also a lot of having some basic training, whether it's how do you deal well with others, how do you listen effectively, active listening skills, etc. I think that's something that's very important to have, and encourage your employees to do it. Maybe it's once per quarter to say, set it in their goals, to say you have to attend some type of training, internally offered or maybe externally offered, X amount of times per year.
So training, and then there's the bigger, more nebulous concept of development. So if you think when you join a company, you get the pitch about you could have a long-term successful career. You can be like Rebecca and be there 14, 15 years or longer. But yet development is more than just training. It's the experience, the exposure. What do you see are the issues? One question I always have, for example, is who's responsible for an employee's development? And how are employees today looking at these opportunities for career?
I think it's an excellent question, and it's a combination. Oftentimes I think, or I have witnessed myself, an employee thinks, well, my manager owns my development. They didn't tell me to take anything, or they didn't tell me what to take. But then I say to my colleague, well, I want to grow and I want to do this and I want to be promoted. I might be telling my family members this, my friends, but yet internally I'm saying, manager, what are you doing for me? No, the employee should own some of that as well. If I want to, it should be a collaboration. Maybe having this individual development plan, sitting down with that employee saying, what is it? And if you don't have that already established at your company, ask your manager, I'd love to sit down with you. I would love to be you someday. I would love to be this. Can you help me develop a plan and how for me to get to that spot? So it needs to be that collaboration. Maybe where my manager sees me going isn't somewhere where I have a passion to. Well, then that's kind of pointless. And we're all wasting time, because now you're developing me into a path that I'm not even interested in. You never asked me. You didn't know I would rather go into this other path. So I think you have to have open and transparent communication. Otherwise, you could be wasting a lot of time.
Okay, we're at the point where we're going to take our second break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Biz Talk. This week we're talking to Rebecca Stanonik from Essity. And before we get back to Rebecca, I just want to mention a couple of opportunities for education with SCORE. So, as per usual, if you go to our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, you'll see in the top row there's a tab for workshops and events. And I talk a lot about stuff that's upcoming, but now I want to talk this week just quickly about what's in the recorded webinars section. So these are previous live events, and to be honest, there's thousands of them out there, but there's real ways to go and learn a lot of things. So one question we get an awful lot of times from businesses that are underway and started up but working forward is, how do you do marketing? And so there's three things I want to mention, 3 courses, all held live within the last 3 months, but the webinars are now available online. One of them with search engine optimization changes in 2026, how to keep your website discoverable. And that's critical for people who rely on that, because artificial intelligence has completely changed the way search engine optimization works. Second one was email marketing strategies, a 2-part series on how to do it, how to automate it. And a third one was on turn social media into revenue, a 3-part series. So for small businesses without a large budget for marketing, you've got something on search engine optimization, something on email marketing, and something on social media to kind of help you go out and maybe update your skills a little bit. So again, go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin and click on the website, recorded webinars, and you will find a whole host of different topics that you can work through and learn much more about. Some have small charges, others are free, but you'll see that as you work through it. So now we'll turn it back to Rebecca. And Rebecca, just following up again as we talk about where we are are with the discussion we were having on development. How did the pandemic impact both hiring practices, training, and development? How did it change the way you did things?
Terry, I have to be honest, I can't wait until we're forward enough in the future where we don't have to reference the pandemic anymore. But it still is close enough where it did change. It changed a lot of things, and it did change, forever changing, I think, some of the things I see in the human resources world. Some for the better, some not so much for the better. But from a hiring perspective, it really allowed us to say not everybody has to be face-to-face for everything. I still agree. I get a lot more out of a face-to-face conversation and or even just that presence, being in a room with somebody during a meeting. But there's also a lot of meetings that can happen, good meetings that can take place through video or just through that phone conversation. And it started with interviews. Now, instead of flying people around to get to their interviews, we have video interviews. We all have to be a lot more comfortable from the video perspective, but it allows us, I think, a lot more freedom in doing that. Maybe even opens up where some of the individuals can be located in doing their job day to day as well. From a training perspective, same thing. I think, or from an onboarding, we've done a lot more onboarding from the comforts of somebody's home with maybe they're wearing shorts and Crocs or whatever they happen to be wearing, business on the top and fun, relaxed on the bottom. But it still allows people to feel engaged. I think when the pandemic started, none of us did it very well. I think everybody was thrown into it, kind of the same thing. It was a dumpster fire. But now post it, and we're post it now, several years that we can look back and say, we've adapted some of those practices and do them really well and super engaging, and where people get to feel that culture and understanding of who I am in that company and what they stand for by how we do some of that virtual onboarding.
So as we look at where you are today, what new things is HR doing today that they weren't doing 10 years ago? What's changed?
I think that's an excellent question. I think sometimes I don't even realize what's changing right underneath my nose until after you look back and say, oh, wow, when's the last time we've done that? Or we're doing something different and I don't even realize it. It's probably a lot of the things that I've already said is how you adapt to the virtual world and how you can do things better from a virtual world. But I also think it has a lot to do with changing the mentality of whether it's employees and or the management teams that HR partners with. I think that, or it's at least my hope, or at least it's my personal way that I conduct business, is I want to be looked at as a person who happens to hold a job in the field of human resources. Oftentimes when you walk into a room, you're going to be judged and it's going to be, oh, HR's here. Shh, HR's here. We can't talk about that anymore. And it's the common joke. People laugh. I usually laugh at it as well. But I think HR has definitely moved away from that. And some of the practices are, what is the value that human resources bring? It's not just about the hiring or the firing or the payroll administration. What's the value? What's the partnership that we can bring? So I like to remind my managers or the employees I work with is, you know what? We both put on our pants in the morning the same way, one leg at a time. We come to work the same way. So let's partner with each other and not just look at each other at what the position that we hold. Let's really have and that's the only way I think you can really have a good conversation. And also putting the human back into the name, exactly what we work for is human resources, putting that human back into it.
Rebecca, before when we were talking about who takes responsibility for employees, and you said it's a collaboration between the manager and the employee. Sometimes people also tend to forget in HR, you're also an employee. You're also in a department and as an individual, as a manager developing. How have you found your own motivation to continue to learn, to grow, to get past the stresses of deadlines and hiring and keep the job enriched and fulfilling for yourself?
Excellent question. I think as I continue to grow, the more I grew, the more excited I got about the opportunities, then, which also then coincided with me saying, okay, what is it that I don't like? I don't like when I get stressed. I don't like when I don't know this answer. So what can I do to better myself to be able to handle those situations? I also think it's not repetitive in the thing that you have to do it every day, but the more and more times that you see not deadlines, but deadlines or maybe tough conversations, employee relation conversations, and dealing with those, you hopefully learn from each situation and you just get better and better at doing it. So there is that repetitiveness, and just like anything, hopefully there's always a takeaway and a learning. So I tend to try to keep track of situations that happen, take a pause after, do some self-reflection, take some notes about it to say, okay, here's what I thought. And personally, when I'm either forced to put pen to paper to write it down or type it out, it really forces me to think through it and then also do some self-acknowledgement. I like to use, hey, you have a mirror. If you're holding a handheld mirror, make sure you turn it to yourself and just not outward at everybody else. But what did I do? And then also that holding accountability is giving some of that feedback to my manager during maybe your one-to-one, like, hey, I just finished this and I want you to know this is how I think I could have done better. This is what I saw in myself. And then it really opens up them to give you more feedback as well. Sometimes feedback is hard to receive. Feedback is a gift. Just like that, if you got a ugly Christmas sweater from Aunt Mabel, you're maybe not going to like it. It was a gift. So you smile and you deal with it. Or it could be a brand new car from your parents. So any type of feedback that you get as a gift doesn't mean you always like it, but you figure out how to adapt. And before you know it, wearing ugly sweaters is a thing. Thanks, Aunt Mabel.
Just to shift gears, the topic that comes up with a lot of our SCORE clients, and it affects companies large and small, is all our communities are becoming more diverse culturally. People coming from different backgrounds, et cetera. And be it a salaried position or opening or even an hourly position that might be more clerical or in one of the manufacturing facilities, et cetera. How has that diversity, and it's a plus for companies. I think companies are more enriched when they're diverse, but what sorts of challenges and opportunities does that give the HR world?
It gives us a lot of opportunities for sure. I do think people appreciate having that diversity on their team, diversity of thought, diversity of culture, etc. But it also sometimes can be a hurdle to get to that point. So what I like to do with it, and I think a lot of my other colleagues, professional colleagues, could agree with it, is there's a lot of different assessment tools. It's how do you work effectively as a team? Maybe it's something like an HBDI, where it's a team assessment. Everybody talks about how do they like to receive information, give information, where do they feel their skill sets are at, and then you get to see as it unfolds in a team environment or maybe through a facilitation of, oh, you're not being short with me. You just want to get right to the point. And you actually know more than you thought. You just use way too many words to get to it. So now we just established that, we understand it, and now how do we move forward? And it kind of highlights when you see more people who all think alike, you might come to that outcome a lot faster because everybody's thinking alike. When you have diversity of thought, it might take you longer to get to the answer or to the direction you want, but 9 times out of 10, that's going to be sustained. It's much more sustainable. The quicker the answer everybody went, usually it's going to have to take a couple more times before it's going to stick because you only thought of it from one aspect. So those are the challenges or opportunities I see that HR brings value to, is not only to point out that you need that, but then how do you work effectively in that environment?
There's also, using your mirror analogy, after you build that diversity, the mirror can also reflect back to the organization how beneficial it is too, can it?
Correct. Agreed.
And what do you see going forward, Rebecca, in your department, your world, what does the future hold in terms of skills and capabilities and responsibilities for an HR manager in the HR group?
And you're asking from an HR perspective, not for the people we're hiring, right? So what do I
see? It can be both, but
okay.
Obviously you're at the tip of the spear, so to speak, of seeing those trends.
I definitely see from an HR perspective, somebody who is like who can change colors. So just like you want to blend in, you want to be able to adapt where you need to adapt, but yet hold your own. You can't just be a yes person. You have to be able to challenge the status quo. You have to be able to show empathy, but also being maybe stern or hold tight to a policy. You have to be consistent. But just because there's consistency, once again, you still can do it with empathy. So it's bringing back really the human into human resources. And I think showing your value in your partnership, it is more than just hiring, firing, policies, procedures. It's so much more than that, but you have to be able to adapt.
One thing that has kind of stood out for me over the last 6 months or so is hearing a lot about how artificial intelligence is making companies hesitate to bring in young employees. As an HR person, how do you think through that, and how do you help manage what training and development means in the future in that kind of world?
AI is something that we're all still trying to figure out, even though we use it daily. I rely on ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever resource that some AI function. Some days I use it daily, several times a day. Sometimes I might not. It all depends. I think you have to understand how it relates to your company and what positions and how do you use it in a good way. It's also, I think, an adaptation of, correct, AI is coming and it can do some of the basic, some people might say more than basic tasks, but it always needs to be checked and balanced. You can use it, but you have to validate it. Oftentimes I'll put something into AI or summarize this report, summarize this webinar that I didn't have time to listen to, and it's going to get close, but there's always an element that needs a human factor and a human touch to it. So as we continue to go through it, I think new jobs are going to come out of it. Sure, my job might, not my specific job, but a job might be eliminated by AI. But I also think a new job is going to be created on how does it coexist with AI. So I think a lot of things, if we look back to maybe, conversations with our grandparents, great grandparents, there's a lot of things that have changed in their lifetimes, and AI is the one for us. It's the one that we're all talking about right now. But I think when I'm talking to my grandchildren, it'll be something else, and we'll already know how to coexist with one another.
So as you look at new employees coming in, what's different about how their expectations when they come into a company versus what it might have been 15 years ago?
I think that employees really do want to know and understand a strong company culture. They're just not showing up. And I'm not saying 15 years ago people did this, but I see a lot more individuals not just showing up for a paycheck. They're showing up for really what the experience is, and it needs to be more than just the technical part of my job. I want to know what community involvement does the company do? How do they give back to the community? What do they support me in doing in community involvement? What do they do? How do they appreciate maybe flexible working hours? That's been very hard, where some people want to have different working styles than others. The pandemic, even though I said, it's still there, is being in an office or being out of an office. We went through a point where everybody wanted to work remote. I've recently had people who have given their notice and left because they didn't have enough of being in an office. So I think we're quickly changing back to wanting more of that hybrid approach where we want people to have the flexibility to be in and out a little bit more. But I think the workforce that we're seeing just wants a lot more flexibility. And that one's being a little bit of a challenge to how do you get the right collaboration with a team when you don't know when other people are working and so forth. But it's a positive challenge that we're working through.
Okay, great. We are going to take our third and final break. You're listening to Biz Talk with Score and WHBY. I'll be right back. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their generous support of Biz Talk. Haling & Associates help small businesses and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but plan for the future. Haling & Associates, personal connection, positive results. Wherever you are in the life of your business or your own life, Johnson Financial Group works to match banking and wealth services needed to help you complete your mission. Thank you to the Business News for promoting our program in the biweekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin with the latest news and topics for this region. We are grateful for the support of Community First Credit Union. At its core, Community First Credit Union is a community of member owners where people work together to improve their financial well-being and help one another. New North, the Regional Marketing and Economic Development Corporation, is an active supporter of SCORE. New North facilitates economic growth and helps people in this region live their best lives. Since 1919, Baird has guided families through investments, trusts, estate, and tax planning advice. So no matter what the future brings, you can be confident you're ready, because your family is Baird's focus. And lastly, we'd like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund with the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation to BizTalk and SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. This week we've been talking to Rebecca Stanonik, the HR director at Essity. And Rebecca, could you let our listeners know how they could find the career site for Essity?
Absolutely. You can find us at www.essity, which is ESSITY. And on that career.com, on that page, you can migrate up into the upper right-hand corner and you can find a careers page. A couple of clicks to understand a little bit more about who Essity is and the potential careers that we have. But then you can go directly to North America. You can subscribe to different positions that you might find of interest so that you would be notified if one is posted in the future.
Okay. We'll turn over to John now and let him lead you through the rest of the show.
Becca, in the last section, we talked about the culture of the company and what employees and prospective employees are looking for today. It's more than just a job and a task. And one of the things is how the company is involved in the community and the impact that they're having. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of what Essity is doing and how important that is to not only draw good candidates to the company, but also to build the pride of working with an organization as part of your community?
Absolutely. Essity's philosophy is we want to give back to the community and where the passions of our employees are. So what that means is we ask employees to bring forth what is passionate to them. Is it something as, for example, for myself, when my two boys were growing up, soccer was a passion of one of them and curling was a passion of another one. So is it sponsorship through some youth activities, or is it sponsorship through, I want to help create meals. Maybe it's through the St. Joe's food pantry. I want to help pack some of those meals. So we like to give back to where our employees' passions lie and work together with them through that. And that too then allows us to get our name known.
Hey, Rebecca, thank you for being on the show. It was really great to hear about HR and how it can help employees and the business develop. So thank you very much. Absolutely. My pleasure. Okay. And for listeners, you've been listening to Biz Talk with SCORE on WHBY. You can also find us on our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin or podcatchers everywhere. So go out and listen to the older episodes. We've been on the air for 25 years and on podcasts and podcasters for about a year. So we really appreciate you listening in as you can. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.